Address the nation tonight at 9 o'clock Eastern time, not about the war with Iran or the cost of living, but the president has said he will discuss, quote, free and fair elections as he continues to push those unsubstantiated and disproven claims that the 2020 election he lost to Joe Biden was stolen. Two senior administration officials tell NMS Now the speech has not been finalized, but will focus on voting machine security and alleged efforts by foreign nations to influence U.S. elections.
Talk about the danger that the office of the DNI could pose to American elections, Norm.
Well, at Democracy Defenders Fund and Action, Jacob, our team includes those who helped litigate most of those 63 cases Donald Trump tried and failed. Yeah. His record was 62-1. He tried and failed to overturn the election, and the people in his own administration at the time stood up to him. If you have somebody in the position of the Director of National Intelligence, the DNI, who is going to go along with these bizarre fantasies and conspiracy theories, that is a threat to our elections. But here is the good news, Jacob. We alone have over 300 cases and matters, including many election cases, and we're winning. Donald Trump is failing in the courts. We'll take him on if we have to. That includes he just tried to subpoena election materials in Georgia, in Fulton County. The judge, a Trump-appointed judge, quashed the subpoena. So voters should be confident that despite this nonsense, it'll be work, but we will make sure that all votes are counted and that we have free and fair elections in our country and not this Norm, propaganda.
Well, in terms of the speech, we should all be extremely concerned about the process that is leading to the speech, because what's going on here is they are combing through the holdings of the intelligence community and pushing, some factions are, to declassify previously classified intelligence, and there's a debate going on, and apparently John Ratcliffe is actually trying to stop some of this, according to our reporting. And look, the U.S. intelligence community collects vast amount of information around the world. They are intercepting phone calls, hacking into computers, talking to sources. And there's a lot of information that they collect that isn't actually true, that doesn't pan out. That's why they pay thousands of analysts to sift through this stuff and to create what's called finished intelligence that gets up to the policymakers. And so if you just start trolling around in the U.S. intelligence holdings, you can find something that says almost anything. Remember, there was a bogus report that the FBI put out and then withdrew, that China was circulating a fake license, was importing fake IDs into the United States to flood America with IDs so that people could vote falsely. It turns out that those were just fake IDs that teenagers wanted to buy to get into bars, and the FBI withdrew that report, but the people behind withdrawing that report were later fired in this administration. So we should all be very concerned that someone is feeding Donald Trump raw intelligence that he may just willy-nilly make public, and he has the legal right to do that at the cost potentially of sources and methods of where that intelligence came from, and at the cost of misleading the American public and suggesting that things happened that didn't. As David pointed out earlier, there is no evidence that any foreign hand or anyone else was able to hack into voting machines to change votes. There have long been foreign influence operations. The U.S. intelligence community reported on those back in 2020, and they weren't meaningfully. They didn't change anything in terms of how that election ended up going, guys.
To entertain the president's delusions, I mean, over an issue, Willie, that if you wanted to take judicial notice of who won that election, you could take judicial notice in any courtroom across America. There's 63 federal judges who said that Biden won it. You had the Supreme Court of the United States rejecting one Trump appeal after another, and even in one Pennsylvania case, saying that there were not enough votes to even swing Pennsylvania. You could just go on, but again, you have this man, this learned man, who, again, more interested in the president's delusions about 2020 than telling the truth? And how can it not remind you? How can that sequence not remind people of George Orwell, who said, the party told you to reject the evidence of your eyes and your ears? And when I saw it, not to be melodramatic, but I thought of Hannah Arendt's The Origins of Totalitarianism, where she said the first goal of tyrants is to tear down the institutions that protect the society. And the way they do that, authoritarians, they do that by replacing competence with blind loyalty. And of course, she was talking about Hitler. She was talking about Stalin. We could be talking about Orban or any number of authoritarians through the years. But yeah, this is demeaning for him, but also frightening for us that he can't state what everybody in that room knew.
How did you feel watching Todd Blanche today?
Well, look, I thought he gave an unflinching defense of the attorney general that he has been, and several senators, like Senator Booker, made the point. This isn't a normal confirmation. This is a performance review. We have a record to go through, and he seemed to defend himself in every particular, down to that colloquy with Senator Schiff, where he said, "Oh, I haven't changed at all. I'm the same good old Todd Blanche," and that's a point that nobody of any party who knows what the department was before and what it is now would say is accurate. He's changed it violently and for the worse, but he just blandly said, "Oh, it's me, good old Todd." But they now have a record to go after. It's not just a matter of hoping for the best.
This is from a current administration official. Current administration official. I've never seen any intelligence that an adversary hacked or changed or flipped votes, ever. And then you have one from the first term who says all these claims are, quote, complete and utter BS, although that person used the full word.
Yes, 6 years later, and the president's inability to admit that he lost the 2020 election. So the speech isn't final. The president himself decides on what words he says. But I am expecting no bombshells here. And if there are bombshells, it shows that there are two factions in the White House now about this. There's a faction that says there isn't evidence that votes were changed by any foreign power. There is no evidence of that whatsoever. That's what everyone agrees. That's been agreed on for years. And there's another faction led by Bill Pulte, the acting director of national intelligence, and John Solomon, a longtime Fox News pundit who sort of pushes all these conspiracy theories that there were votes changed. And I just want to say I'm very proud. It's work by me and Vaughn Hilliard and Laura Barone Lopez and Jake Traylor. Our coverage of this over the last 2 days has angered Steve Bannon. He's sort of like, why is MS Now getting all this information?
Called you the enemy yesterday.
He called me a media assassin. And I want to say I'm doing my job. But so that we are defining the narrative. And the narrative here is that this is going to be warmed over conspiracy theories. It's about China. And the key thing here is that China, like many foreign countries, tried to influence the 2020 election. Russia tried to influence the 2020 election against Joe Biden. China tried to influence the election. These are just public tweets, information, this kind of stuff. And China was against Trump. There's no evidence that China successfully changed any votes, hacked into any machines. And what you might have is John Ratcliffe made this is a public old complaint, where he said in 2021, as then he was the director of national intelligence, again, Trump controlled the government in 2020, he said that he felt the CIA's assessment of the size of China's their effort to influence public opinion, was larger than what the CIA concluded in its assessment. That is what John Ratcliffe said. Tonight you'll hear that presented as this terrible effort by the CIA. This would be Gina Haspel, also Donald Trump's appointee to run the CIA, somehow suppressing this news. The point is, great, China put out a lot of propaganda online. They did not change votes. There's nothing new here. I expect this speech, and if he goes farther, there's one chance the president will say, we shouldn't use X type of voting machine. I don't want to name a type because this isn't fair to these companies. A, that's false. All the voting machines are safe. B, The president, since he came back to office, has gutted funding and gutted CISA programs that secure our voting machines. And C, most importantly, the president does not have the power to say to states, don't use these election machines. Again, in the Constitution, he does not control how these elections are administered. So if he makes some sweeping declaration about, I decertify this type of voting machines, it's false, and he has no power, and he'll lose in court.
Thursday, 16 July, year of our Lord 2026. Our coverage will begin at 5 o'clock this afternoon with the War Room. And, of course, John Solomon and Just the News. John will probably not be able to take his journey, but Amanda Head, then Stinch. And then we're going to take up coverage again at 8 o'clock for an hour pregame, actually hear the speech from the East Room, the remarks of the president, and then we'll have, all the analysts and observers and hosts of and reporters at Real America's Voice in the War Room. We'll wrap it up then. Tonight's just going to be the first day. This is an ongoing effort. The task force under John Solomon's gone through millions of pages. I think some of those will be made or be declassified and made to the public. Pulte doing the same thing. Right there, you see two factions in the White House. The faction that doesn't believe this ought to walk into President Trump right now and just say flat out, "Hey, Biden won the 2020 election." Just go in and tell him, Joe Biden won the 2020 election. Just like Clayton said yesterday, Clayton is basically going to be Dan Coates' deuce. We are asking for trouble if we continue on with the confirmation of Clayton. And I'm not saying that Pulte should be the permanent DNI. He certainly should see out. He's done more in 4.5 weeks than any DNI has done. And John Solomon and the task force people he has are very sophisticated, longtime members, many of them longtime members of the intelligence community, to know not just where the bodies are buried, but how much dirt's on top of each one. Right there you see Rhodes, and now they're mocking you because they're getting briefed by a faction of the White House that believes that Joe Biden's a legitimate president in 2021. They should go in and tell the president that. They've never told the president that. What they do is they go to MSNBC, a network that is set up on one premise: Trump derangement syndrome. The no kings, the oligarchs, all of this, they slobber on Mandani and all these radical Marxist jihadist candidates. You've got the most radical people around, Rachel Maddow, Chris Hayes, the whole gang. You got Nicole Wallace, whining every day at 4 o'clock. The show's a big hit. So I think it's one of their biggest shows. But have the guts to walk into the president. Don't go to why would you go? They're bragging about it. They're bragging about, hey, they got, we're being briefed. And Bannon and these guys are losing their mind. He called me a media assassin. Because you are. That's what you get paid for over at MSNBC. You stir it up enough that the Butler assassination attempt took place, and then the one down in on the golf course. You're working towards taking the House to do one thing, to impeach Donald Trump, not just to destroy Trump, but the people around him, and most importantly to you, Trumpism in MAGA. That's your plan. I don't have a problem with it. I like clarity of purpose. We attempt to have it here in the War Room. But we understand your purpose. Understanding that purpose, why would anybody in the West Wing possibly allow MSNBC into the West Wing? Well, it's a free media. It's not the free media. They're a propaganda arm of Trump derangement syndrome. They hate Trump. And Rhodes in that crowd right there, it's among the biggest haters. Judge, jury, and execution. Why would you brief him? Why would he have a meeting? Why does he know all this inside baseball? Why are they sitting there right there? Oh, this has all been gone over before. And told by people in the White House that believe that. If you believe that, resign. Look what you've done to this administration. No mass deportations, Oh my God. Unbelievable. They're briefing the enemies of the President of the United States. Think about that embrace that fact for a second. Short break.
Night, a speech for the ages.
What will President Trump talk about during his primetime address to the nation?
He is supposed to talk about some declassified information investigations.
I think you're going to have hard evidence of fraud during the 2020 election.
Any idea what you might hear? Anything that could change your mind about what happened in 2020? I'll wait to hear what he says to back it up.
Say it to the public. Come on. We're big boys and girls. We can take it.
It's really, really big news. It doesn't get bigger.
They pick primetime speeches because they're important.
I've never seen anything like it, quite frankly. Who knows what they found?
Without free and fair elections, you don't have a country.
It was stolen.
I think it's going to be a smorgasbord.
The Democrats don't want to hear it.
I think it's pretty obvious they stole 2020.
I think when people see the facts, there's no amount of interpretation that the spin nicers can do.
It's going to be a very big announcement.
I'll leave it at that and let the American people judge, but I think there'll be plenty there.
Coverage begins at 5 p.m. Eastern.
Okay, Real America's Voice at 5 o'clock. We're going to go through this in detail and tee it up, and then you'll have Amanda Head and the John Solomon Show. I imagine John Solomon will probably be doing some last-minute work on that. Stinch will be on right after that for his regularly scheduled program, but it'll focus on this. And then at 8 o'clock, we will pick it back up with, I think, a couple of the Studio 6B guys. And we'll go through analysis and kind of lay out the framework before 9 o'clock. President speaks from the East Room tonight. So it's a little more formal than I thought it was going to be at first. Speaks from the East Room. And then we'll have the entire team on and go until kind of we're talked out. This is part of a process, and just remember, this is just the first. This declassification program has gone, I don't know, 4.5 weeks. They've gone through millions of pages. I think they have, I don't know, thousands to put forward, although they could put out more. I think all the stuff at the CIA that should go out. You know, I used to upset, you get a personal briefer, then you sit in the president's daily brief. The question Navarro and I would always ask him to upset him, why is this classified? Why is this classified? 95% of the stuff they put up, which is all second rate, it's very second rate for what we pay for. It's very second rate. I mean, you get some photos that are pretty amazing, and you get some inside gossipy stuff that's okay. But by and large, it's fleet average. And their track record shows that. I just want to go back and make sure when I say part of a process, this is going to be part of a process to essentially see who runs this country. Is it the intelligence apparatus with the national security apparatus and parts of the legal law enforcement establishment and this corrupt judiciary? Is that who runs this country? Or the people who are elected by the people of the United States in free and fair elections? Who actually governs? That should just be, take your number 2 personal and write that on your top of your paper tonight. So maybe you're taking notes or thinking about it. Who governs? Who governs us? There's a couple of things that, and you talk about the track record of these people, and this is why this is not just about 2020 and what happened then. It's about absolutely today. What are the 2 biggest issues? Well, when the economy, right? The economy, affordability, economies. Let's write that down, economy. Affordability. The economy we know is impacted because Scott Bessent and President Trump had a plan. The pivot and the turnaround was coming in the first quarter of this year, as projected by Scott Bessent, our former contributor here. And then we got into this thing called the Iran war. The second phase of it, the 12-day war, already went beforehand. That war, coupled with the mass invasion of our country, still, the destruction of wages of the 20 million illegal aliens are here, the taking of jobs, and the graft and corruption. Every day you see Somalians this, Haitians this, steal, these phony fraud, all the fraud they're doing, these massive deficits. It's all inextricably linked to both intel and to the illegitimate Biden regime. Tulsi did a huge drop before she left, about Fauci. That had never been released before. The whole situation with the Chinese Communist Party, who are up to their neck in this, remember, it was a pandemic they released. Go back in time in 2019. They refused to sign a deal. We had negotiated with them in good faith with their highest level guys, Vice Chairman Li He, with Lighthizer, Navarro. They refused to do it, tore it up, and in May of 2019 declared a people's war on us. Then the next thing you know, you had a pandemic, and then they got involved in trying to steal the 2020 election. Why? Go back and look at the laptop from hell. The Bidens were in business with them. That's quite obvious from the laptop. This is why the intelligence community, remember, came out with the false narrative, the bald-faced lie about, oh, this is Russian disinformation. Now we know it's obvious, and they lied about it because the intelligence services are always going to lie. That's why Radcliffe's running around right now, and the CIA, the people within the forever. You've got to stop this. You must stop this. You have to stop this. Well, MSNBC, if there wasn't anything, if it wasn't revelatory, why are the intelligence agencies all over people at the White House? Why are they using you as a conduit to get the information? This has got to be stopped. Has to be stopped. Shouldn't do this. This is bad. That's on the pandemic. We haven't gotten to the bottom of that. Now, Tulsi dropped a bunch of information about Fauci and the deep state and how the public health, Collins and Fauci are part of that. We're going to have, Michael Pack has done something for the Wall Street Journal of all people, the opinion page, a 30-minute movie that just reinforces that. Michael will be with us Saturday. And they're not rabid partisans like we are. Then you get into two other things that have to be addressed. Number one is October 7th. The Netanyahu government refuses to even have any public inquiry of that. The biggest inquiry in Israel, we've had it, is Katz, the former managing editor of the Jerusalem Post, came on War Room, I think, for 1 hour and walked through his book, I think it's Why Israel Slept. And that's a non-classified version just from his interviews. And it's pretty damning. But where's the great CIA and their partners, the Mossad, on that? Well, how come we don't know any of the facts about it, don't really understand how that happened? How they were caught totally by surprise. How did they have their Pearl Harbor? And they say, well, they're fighting a war, you can't do that. Well, in the equivalent time of World War II, I think there had been 6 inquiries into Pearl Harbor, official inquiries into Pearl Harbor. During the war, people wanted to know how in the hell this happened. Just like they want to know October 7th, because October 7th is like a domino. It's triggered so many events. And then that gets to, let's bring it up to modern times, to the most modern times. President Trump refused to get involved in regime change, war, and the 12-day war. He sent an expeditionary force with a catastrophic bombing of the nuclear program because President Trump's number one objective is denuclearization. He came in front of the nation and said total obliteration. And you know why he said that? Because it was total obliteration. He wasn't going to be part of regime change. And the Tucker Carlsons and the Charlie Kirks and others that advise the president, please, whatever you do, don't get sucked into regime change work, because that's what the Israelis want. That's what, well, not all the Israelis. That's what Netanyahu, Imperial Israel, the Israel First Project wants. Tel Aviv, Levin, and that crowd. And then we get up to the great question, and that is, what was the intelligence the president actually received in this current debacle? There was no need to go in a second time. On the exquisite intelligence they got, it may have made a case. We need to see that. There needs to be an official inquiry into what the President of the United States was told by these very intelligence agencies. Why was it not considered we had total obliteration? What was left on denuclearization that needed to be done? And did you need to do what the Israelis wanted and partner with them, which is clearly a decapitation and a regime change? Who gave, what intelligence agencies came up and told the president a massive 72-hour strategic bombing campaign that the Iranian people will take to the streets, and they're going to overthrow the theocratic regime that they helped put in place 47 years ago,
because it has very little support. It's about to be overthrown. And they're very weak militarily, and they won't take much of a pounding. The people are prepared to turn. That is what you're dealing with tonight when the president, you're going to sit there and go, why was this stuff not out years ago? Why have we not known about this? Why was this suppressed? Who did this? The question you have to ask yourself tonight, and this is the first of a series of revelations that will come as more declassifications take place. At the top of your legal pad or whatever you take notes with, just put the question up there. Who governs? When we talk about the sovereignty of the United States of America, who is sovereign? Is it the American people? Is what these people fought a revolution for? They fought a revolution against the longest of odds. Did they do this to put the CIA in charge? Did they do that to put DNI and the other 17 intelligence agency in charge? Did they do that to put the Department of War in charge? Are the FBI in charge? Or some element of dark matter that works behind the scenes to thwart the will of the American people? Did you vote for any of this? Did you vote for these eternal wars? They're not forever wars now, they're eternal wars. Did you vote to spend trillions every year in defense? Defending us against what? When we don't have control of the cities of the United States. The enemy is inside the gate. And the enemy's in City Hall in Manhattan, in City Hall in Los Angeles, and Chicago, and Minneapolis, and the governors of these states. And guess what? The enemy is inside the gate in the imperial capital. From the intelligence agency, now we know, all the way to the White House staff. Short break. Back in a moment.
Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
I want to make sure you take advantage of all these specials. Chapter, a digital company that saved War and Posse members over $1 million right now on their Medicare, is available for a free consultation. 845 War Room. They'll walk you through all the different perturbations based upon data of where you can save money, but most importantly, get the optimum program, the program that's best for you. It's enormously confusing if you don't do it, so use Chapter. It's totally free, and there's no obligation. 845 War Room. They have a hotline set up just for the War and Posse. Call them today, 845 War Room. Also, Home Title Lock has a special in honor of the 250th anniversary of the birth of the nation, which is documented in the magnificent book Revolution, the birth of the greatest nation on earth. Go to HometitleLock.com. Steve25, that would be me, 25. You get 25% off the $1 million triple lock protection for 2 years. Talk to Natalie Dominguez and the team. It's absolutely amazing. You do not want to, you don't want to miss it. Also, All Family Pharmacy, allfamilypharmacy.com, promo code Bannon10, you get 10% off. They will hook you up with a physician or licensed medical personnel or a pharmacist that will go through and prescribe the drugs that you need. And I think they have over 400 different items right now. So go talk to them, go talk to their consultants. It's amazing. All Family Pharmacy, the feedback we've gotten from War and Posse is incredible. Allfamilypharmacy.com, promo code Steve Bannon10, not Steve 10, Bannon10. Check it out. Metaxas, we're in the middle of this fight right now. We pick it back up at 5 this evening, and we're going to go all the way to 11, or when we're talked out. It's the first day of this. And by the way, I want to announce the book is now officially number 2 again this week. How many number 2 in the nation? How many weeks has it been on the bestseller list?
This is week number 5. So 1 week it fell off because Amazon ran out of copies and couldn't ship any copies. But 5 out of 6 weeks, it's near the top of the New York Times list. Yesterday, I got the news after I came out of a screening of the terrible movie, The Odyssey. I get the news, it's number 2. And I got to tell you, Steve, I want your audience to know, when a book is number 2 on the New York Times list, next second to the New York Times propaganda by Maggie Haberman, anti-Trump nonsense, whatever. So for all I know, my book is actually number one, but it doesn't matter. When it's at number two, those books should be in the front of every Barnes & Noble store. When you go to a Barnes & Noble store, they got stacks of all the New York Times bestsellers right there. Everybody is telling me they go into Barnes & Noble, there's 0 copies of this book. So the question is, why would that be? Why would a big store like Barnes & Noble, have they put out the word that they don't like books by this publisher because this is a conservative publisher, a free speech publisher, Skyhorse, which is the larger publisher? I don't know what's going on, but I hope your audience will do what you told them to do the other day, is go into the Barnes & Noble store and say, excuse me, Revolution by Eric Metaxas is number 2 on the New York Times list. I don't see copies of it here. What's going on? Don't tell them that you're pro-Trump. Don't tell them you heard this on Steve Bannon, or that you're just say the New York Times has this. Why don't you have copies of this? I mean, when we talk about this war that we're in constantly everywhere, why would a huge corporation like Barnes & Noble not want a true accounting of the birth of the United States of America around our 250th? Why would they not want that in their stores?
Because that's the last thing they want. They don't
Right.
want to. They don't want to empower the people. They don't want to empower people. They're Marxists. All the left wingers run these book companies who are all broke, but they would give up profit. They would give up cash money to
That's
make sure
right.
they suppress this title. This title should be at the front of the store when you walk in. There should be a table with 100 of them, and they should have another 100 in the back to put them in. If they ran it as a real business, they don't. It's another propaganda arm of the left, sir.
That's my point. And I say, if you want to know, are we in a revolution today? If we were living in a truly free country, that would never happen. And that wouldn't have happened 20 years ago, 30 years ago. We're in a time now where corporations have gone woke. They are anti-American. They are on the side of King George III and the British against George Washington. We just have to be clear. Ideologically, they've taken that side. They don't know it. They're too ignorant to understand where they are, but that's who they are. They're monarchists. They do not believe in the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. They think those ideas are for suckers, that we've got a living Constitution, and the elites, the progressive elites, can do whatever they want, and they know better than we do. And it's everywhere. But when you see it in a monster corporation like Barnes & Noble, I have to say, even I am surprised by this. Best-selling books normally are everywhere, especially a book like this. This is not some MAGA book. This is just you read it, Steve. It's just an accounting of American history. This is not some,
No. But you've done something they can never forgive. You've actually talked about the sacred cause that this was, and why these people. This is all about being anti-fragile and having resilience and never giving up and against the longest odds. Your book ends. We just had the 250th commemoration of July 4th, 1776, which was like a huge party for the country, etc. Your book ends in 1783 with the signing of the Treaty of Paris and all the complications of that. It took forever. Every day, the odds looked as long as possible, particularly when we were losing for so long. That's the heroism of these people. That's what and the reason they did it, as you explain in the book. Divine providence was working through them, through their human agency. That is the last thing. The corporations and the deep state, they want to tell you you're defeated. You're just a cog in the wheel, and just go be a happy cog. As they told us in 1984 in Brave New World, you can watch the soccer matches and the World Cup, and you go have a couple of beers, and every day is the same day. They want you just to be a cog, a mindless cog, because a frictionless cog is what they want. That's not. Hey, you want to see friction? Every page of this frickin' book, it's friction. It was not easy. Life was hard, and the British made it a lot harder. The British represent everything we're fighting today. They had essentially a deep state. Why was Commons so corrupted? Why did Franklin, these guys who were Englishmen, how come Commons couldn't solve the problem? How come they didn't even want some variation of Commons to be part of it? Because it was so corrupt. Why was it corrupt? The monopolistic power of the Crown gave the British East India Company, to everybody on the payroll, plus the intelligence services, the Royal Navy, the British Army, everything. It was essentially a deep state that had a king at the top. And these folks said, hey, look, if they're going to build the greatest empire in the world, India will be one leg, we'll be the other. We want out, even if they're going to hang us for treason in this, and it's going to be a great business model, but we'll have no liberty. We'll have no freedom. And quite frankly, they're godless and we're not. That's what jumps off every page at you. That's why they fought the longest odds, particularly when they're getting their ass kicked for the first part of it, sir.
Well, again, this is the whole idea. At the end of the day, it's so simple, right? One group believes in the God of the Bible and says he is real. And I want to honor him and worship him and live my life in accordance with what he says because he is God. There's another group that says that's for suckers. We don't believe in God, or whether he exists or doesn't, we ignore him. We pretend he doesn't exist because we don't care. We've got power. We don't need God's help. And that is the battle that they were in then. It's the battle we are in now. It's always the battle. It's a battle between good and evil. And listen, a lot of these folks on the evil side, they don't believe in good and evil. They don't even believe good exists or evil exists. They just think, whatever, I just want to get mine. So shut up, do what you're told. Honestly, I was driving up here to Connecticut today, and I saw a big sign over the highway, air quality alert. And then it says, limit outdoor activity. And I thought to myself, I'm a free man living in a free country, and some government bureaucrat is telling me limit outdoor activity. I thought, we're not children. Who are you to dare to tell me to limit outdoor activity? I mean, everywhere you look, you see examples of this paternalistic attitude. The British elites had this. They said, the colony, you're children. We're going to tell you what to do. They didn't care that they're dealing with adults who are free adults who answer to God. They don't care. Everywhere you look, it is around us in American society, mostly in the blue states. But I have to tell you, even today, I was reminded of it. I thought, what arrogance that they're talking to adults. They're telling us limit outdoor activity. I thought to myself, this is not some national emergency. This is like, it's a hot day. But we're dealing with this constantly. And if we don't push back, I just want to be clear. If you don't push back against this, if you're not offended by them telling you limit your activity, it's like jump in a lake. I will do exactly as I please. You don't need to tell me. That was the spirit of 76. That was the spirit of these were free men. And they said, we will live and die with honor and dignity. We will not be told what we can and cannot do. We are free. We answer only to God. We have to get back to that, folks. If you've drifted, a lot of people, we've drifted. We got to get back to that. We got to give massive pushback, not just in the voting booth, of course, in the voting booth, but everywhere in life.
In your lived experience, it's number 2. This is amazing. This book is on fire, and one of the reasons it reads like a novel. You will sit there and go, wow, on every page. Where do people go to get the book today? Where do they go to see you, Eric Metaxas?
Yeah. Well, you can get the book immediately at Amazon. If you order it, I think they're shipping it the next day. It's like, so they've got a zillion copies of it. So that would be the first place to go. I'm sure some bookstores have it, but most don't. If you want to get a signed copy, you want to meet me, I am traveling like a lunatic. I will be in Maine, in Bangor, Maine. Go to my website, ericmetaxas.com. I'm going to be in Bangor, Maine. I'm doing a book signing in Nashville next week. I'm going to be preaching in Murfreesboro. After that, I go to England for a week for my Socrates in the City stuff. But then I come back, I'm speaking in Dallas and on and on. I'm traveling constantly, and I love meeting folks, signing books, doing pictures. Like, it's a great, great joy. And a lot of people say, I saw you on War Room. And I said, you go to this church? No. So it's like the word is getting out. It makes me very happy. There's no greater joy for me than to meet patriots all over this country. And I know I'll meet some in England too.
Eric, thank you so much. Congratulations. We got a lot of work to do. Keep this book number 2 and hopefully make it past Maggie Haberman's.
Yeah, that would be a nice thing. I'm going to keep trying. Okay. God bless you, Steve. Thank you so much.
You're doing it great. Folks, from every patriot's grave back to the beginning of this, down to the current time, and that would be you. How this turns out is dependent upon you. You are exactly like the committees on correspondence. You are exactly like the vanguard and the cadres
that had the back of the Adams and the Washingtons and the Hamiltons and the Jeffersons, everybody in between. As now we're going to go into the fighting part of the War of Independence. We kind of finished the revolutionary part that they're actually going to break. Now we're going to go to a war that's going to take many, many, many years. And trust me, it was very tough to see the sunlit uplands. Just like sometimes I understand it's very tough to see the sunlit uplands in our current situation. I got that part. I also got the part that you are in the lineage of the greatest group of people in the history of the earth. How did they build the greatest nation on earth? On their shoulders, working as agents through this agency for divine providence. That's what this book tells you and shows you. And you can see we're doing it today. We've had tremendous victories, against all odd victories. And guess what? We're in another fight now because it ain't going to be easy and it's going to take a long time. This country didn't deteriorate. The managed decline of this nation by its elites didn't happen overnight. It's taken a long time to get here, and it's going to take a long time to get out. But if we are to get out, it's on your shoulders that we're going to get out.
Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Jim Rickers is also giving you a special, $17.76 for strategic intelligence. And it's an introductory offer for 1 quarter. I think you get 3 of them, 1 a month. At the end of that quarter, if you don't renew, you get your $17.76 back. You can't get a better deal than that. Totally risk-free. Boom. You give them $17.76. They send you for a quarter, entire quarter, 3, I think, separate issues of strategic intelligence, which you won't want to put down. You'll read the ink off of it. If you don't love it, it's fine. It's a free country. You're free men and women. Yo, baby. So endeth the lecture. If you don't love it, you tell Jim, I don't love it. I need my $17.76 back, and I'll wait to see you on War Room. I think you'll love it. C-suites around the nation have. Also, the team at Birch Gold, take your phone and text Bannon, B-A-N-N-O-N. That would be your humble servant. 989898. Talk to Philip Patrick and the team. Philip's going to promise to spend an hour with me on Saturday. We're going to go through a lot. You're not going to want to miss that. As Philip Patrick, as only Philip Patrick can do. Talk to Philip Patrick today, the team at Birch Gold, about gold as an alternative. Okay, I want to play again just for your viewing pleasure to see what you're up against, folks. We're not going to make this easy. Was the revolution easy? Is this a book of ease? Is this a book frictionless? No, it was hard. Every day was hard. The odds were long. It was ridiculous they even tried to start it. The odds were so long. The British laughed at them. The British Army laughed at them. The Royal Navy laughed at them. Commons laughed at them. Not all. You had some very smart people in Commons said, hey, I don't think this is smart. I think there's another way to do this. Because you get these Americans, you get these folks who call themselves Americans. As Franklin said, we're Americans now. They're ornery. They got cussedness. They're anti-fragile. You heard this before? As the lecture now start to, we're weaving it all in together. You getting it? You got it now? You have to get, if you don't get it, we're doomed. Let me just be blunt. If you are to put down your bayonets and say, look, I'm just going to go to the beach. I can't do this anymore, Steve. I got that. That is actually maybe a rational response. We're not rational. The folks that started the revolution were not rational. Any rational person say, make a deal, accommodate it. You're going to be part of the biggest empire in history. Just deal with it. It's okay. Right? It's okay. We'll figure it out. No. Your lineage said, screw you. We're free men and women, and we're going to live like free men and women. You know what that means today? Who governs? Is the CIA and the deep state and the elements of the central bank and treasury and the Pentagon and the law enforcement and that group, the permanent government of this country that doesn't care who's in there, and particularly they hate Trump because they hate a populist, nationalist, non-neoliberal, neocon response to the perpetual wars and the invasion of our country and the country being taken over by foreigners, which they love because they can rule that better than they can rule the ornery cussedness of the anti-fragile
American working man and woman? Does it now tie back? Do you now get it? I do get it, Steve. I see what you're saying. Okay, now it's time to go to the ramparts. Now we're going to start the hard part. We got the learning done. Now we got to get on with it. Action, action, action. Let me play it. I want you to see what you're up against. Play it right now.
This is from a current administration official. Current administration official. I've never seen any intelligence that an adversary hacked or changed or flipped votes, ever. And then you have one from the first term who says all these claims are, quote, complete and utter BS, although that person used the full word.
Yes, 6 years later, and the president's inability to admit that he lost the 2020 election. So the speech isn't final. The president himself decides on what words he says. But I am expecting no bombshells here. And if there are bombshells, it shows that there are two factions in the White House now about this. There's a faction that says there isn't evidence that votes were changed by any foreign power. There is no evidence of that whatsoever. That's what everyone agrees. That's been agreed on for years. And there's another faction led by Bill Pulte, the acting director of national intelligence, and John Solomon, a longtime Fox News pundit who sort of pushes all these conspiracy theories that there were votes changed. And I just want to say I'm very proud. It's work by me and Vaughn Hilliard and Laura Barone Lopez and Jake Traylor. Our coverage of this over the last 2 days has angered Steve Bannon. He's sort of like, why is MS Now getting all this information?
Called you the enemy yesterday.
He called me a media assassin. And I want to say I'm doing my job. But so that we are defining the narrative. And the narrative here is that this is going to be warmed over conspiracy theories. It's about China. And the key thing here is that China, like many foreign countries, tried to influence the 2020 election. Russia tried to influence the 2020 election against Joe Biden. China tried to influence the election. These are just public tweets, information, this kind of stuff. And China was against Trump. There's no evidence that China successfully changed any votes, hacked into any machines. And what you might have is John Ratcliffe made this is a public old complaint, where he said in 2021, as then he was the director of national intelligence, again, Trump controlled the government in 2020, he said that he felt the CIA's assessment of the size of China's their effort to influence public opinion, was larger than what the CIA concluded in its assessment. That is what Donald...
Just remember, as hard as you work, as much money as you give, think about this when you're going door to door. Does it make you feel good? That people in the White House will and they're laughing at you right now. They're laughing at you. Yes, I want you mad. I want you damn mad. I want you as mad as the people in Boston and Lexington and Concord and Philadelphia, down the Commonwealth of Virginia. I want you that mad. I want you fighting mad. They were fighting mad. They gave it all up. They tossed away a pretty good life. They tossed away a pretty good life because they understood that centuries, decades, they were fighting for something more than their easy lives. You have fought for it too. And the reward is to have people in the White House brief that group of scum. Think about that. I want you to embrace that throughout the day. I want you seething mad. Because you know what? You deserve to be seething mad. Okay, I'm going to pass it now to the one and only Natalie G. Winters. She's going to take the next hour. I'm back at 5, and I will be with you for the rest of the evening until we have the president's talk from the East Room of the White House, and we do all the analytics. And remember, this is just day one. This is not a wow. This is part of a process. Trust the process. Natalie Winters is next. I'll be back here at 5. See you.